From the young boy who miraculously avoids the charge of 5 bulls, to the man who almost gets struck by lightning by a few inches, here are the luckiest people caught on camera. Here is a birthday party that could have turned sour. A clumsy girl was about to hand her friend, who was turning 23, a large cream cake so that she could blow out the candles. But as she moved it, the girl had a little trouble keeping the cake balanced. The pastry slipped out of his hands, but the worst was magically avoided because his friend had the surprising reflex to grab it in time, without the cake being deformed. For a split second, the young stunner must have shuddered thinking that the party would turn into a housekeeping test for her. In fact, seeing her laughing out loud, you can feel her relief all too well. The joy and laughter could continue. Richard Henriksen is a Norwegian surgeon who is so passionate about extreme sports that he has become famous. One day he went to the top of a cliff, 1,200 meters high, to perform acrobatics on a high bar held between 2 poles. To perform gymnastic tricks a few steps from a huge abyss, you need a strong stomach and decades of experience, like Henriksen. The pictures show how dangerous his feat is, but to reassure you, he survived the exercise and got more than he bargained for, which is undoubtedly the strongest feeling he has ever experienced in his life. But at what price? Indeed, the surgeon almost atrociously lost his life. During one of the acrobatics, one of the 2 poles, badly attached to the cables, collapsed, precipitating the jumper into the void and creating fear and panic among his companions. But the fall was more frightening than harmful since Henriksen was fortunately equipped with a parachute, which he managed to deploy before hitting the ground. This miraculous outcome earned him a newfound fame, and he was invited several times on TV shows to testify. Do you like this video? Then don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell, so you won't miss any of our next publications. We continue. In 2018, the Moulay Abdallah Stadium in Rabat hosted the 9th stage of the Diamond League events, an international athletics competition. Among the athletes registered was the Russian Timur Morganov, a specialist in pole vaulting. As a young man, he had a poor record of achievement, and on this night in Rabat, he was looking for the first good performances of his career. And, fortunately, he did not disappoint, as he managed to take the honorable 3rd place. If this result will remain for him a good memory, on the other hand, the fright he had at the time of the jump will be otherwise marked. After he cleared the bar, the pole almost pierced him vertically during his fall. It was only on the landing mat that he realized how lucky he was. Indeed, the pole, by miracle, just grazed him by crossing his shorts from bottom to top. Since more serious accidents are not uncommon in this sport, the young Russian can thank his star, and better practice his impulses in the future. In a Spanish town, a bullfighting festival was taking place, and as in all such festivities, a release of bulls took place, while a dozen or so overly curious people were still quietly roaming the road. For their misfortune, these bulls were really mad and seemed to have given themselves for the mission to make a carnage on their way. One of these unlucky walkers was a teenager dressed in black. When he saw the ferocity of the bulls, which were particularly determined to attack him, he had only one desire: to jump over the wooden fences that lined the road. Between half a dozen wild bulls, he tries, at the risk of his life, to avoid them. If the young boy comes out unscathed from all these relentless attacks, he owes his survival entirely to his guardian angel. Indeed, he had unimaginable luck, saved a first time by an involuntary dodge, a second time by his placement between 2 frantic bulls, a third time by the collision of 2 bulls, one of which was threatening to run over him, and finally a 4th time, by jumping over the fence at the right moment. This series of threats must have seriously affected him, and perhaps in the future, he will be more careful when strolling the Spanish streets. Romulus McNeil is a 50-year-old man who works as a guidance counselor in North Carolina. That day, he had no idea that the weather would play such an incredible trick on him as it was about to do. Leaving his house, umbrella in hand, he headed to his car to start his day. Although the weathermen recommended sheltering from the storms, Romulus still went about his business. Don't worry, nothing bad will happen to him, and his day will go on as usual, with one small exception. Indeed, the particularity of his day is that he was almost struck by lightning. In the images, we see the powerful discharge whipping the ground a few centimeters from him, so violently that he almost lost his balance. He did not fail to describe his sensation: there was a big bang and a big flash of light. I tried to get away as fast as I could, not knowing what had happened. It was something fast, intense, and powerful, and I just wanted to get to my car. There is a good chance that after this extraordinarily rare experience, Romulus will think twice before going out despite the recommendations of meteorologists. In the middle of a highway, a speeding motorcyclist was about to have an experience he will always remember. Disturbed by a vehicle changing lanes, he tries to decelerate to avoid the worst, but unfortunately, the distance was too short, and the collision inevitable. So far, nothing unusual, but what followed was disconcerting. Propelled forward by the impact, the biker, by a prodigy of reflex, like a gymnast, landed in a crouched position on the roof of the car, without wavering, like during a stunt in the middle of an action movie. After that, he waits quietly for his four-wheeler to slow down so he can get off. If he has no injuries, his bike must have been well damaged. Anyway, all ends miraculously well, and the biker will remember that his athletic ability probably prevented him from breaking his neck that day. Off the coast of Guadalupe Island, a Chinese diving instructor had the not-so-reassuring idea of seeing sharks up close underwater, in an observation cage. Well equipped, and armed with his long experience, he descends into the cage, while the fearsome predator stirs near the bars. If this short adventure ended happily, however, the diver and his team lived seconds of fright and worry well palpable in the images. Indeed, the overpowered shark had managed to break the bars of the cage, of which only the top is visible. For a few interminable moments, during which we do not see what is happening underwater, the crew members were busy rescuing the trapped diver, whose chances of survival seemed to diminish with each second. When the shark stealthily emerges from the water and a trail of blood is seen around it, the chances seem even less. But the experienced diver, by remaining perfectly still underwater, escaped without a scratch, unlike the shark, who injured himself by breaking the bars. There was a general sigh of relief on the boat. These images showing a skier in the glaciers of Alaska filmed by a helicopter are very impressive. An adventurer had gone to the top of one of these glaciers to ski, and provide the cameraman with beautiful images for a documentary. The skier knows well that it is risky to slide in the middle of winter on a mountain peak covered with such a thick coat of snow, and what's more, at the unstable end of the plateau. But despite the peril, the skier escaped unharmed and was able to complete his dangerous exercise. However, he frightened himself, triggering a terrible avalanche, which almost engulfed him. The agile skier was only able to avoid the tumble by being extremely agile, always keeping a minimal but sufficient distance between him and the break zone. When you know that skiers are the favorite prey of avalanches and that the chances of survival when you are swept away are almost nil, you can only realize the extent of this sportsman's good fortune. It is well known that in India, as in all densely populated areas, road networks leave much to be desired. This situation is all the more worrying as transport is often overloaded and makes its long journeys on impassable and dangerous roads. Buses, in particular, are on the front line. Indeed, the local people realize a perilous and spectacular journey to go from one village to another, transported in old and overloaded buses, in the middle of the mountainous regions. However, they are too accustomed to these crossings of hell to worry about it. Indeed, in most of the videos showing the bus teetering dangerously over the void, one notices with astonishment that the expression of the visible passengers is always calm. Despite the long experience and the invincible composure of the drivers who risk more than their lives every day in such itineraries, the journeys on the cramped roads, on the mountainside, cause many victims, unfortunately, removed too late from the bottom of the ravines, with the help of a great deal of machinery and rescue devices. In this country, which has the third largest road network in the world, it is deplorable that 2 out of 5 villages are not connected to any road. Let's hope that the great €20 billion highway project, initiated by the authorities, will reduce the disturbing number of deaths on the roads of the second most populated country in the world. In May 2014, was held as usual in Australia the morning talk show presented by Sarah Harris. In the show of the day, the presenter was accompanied by the telepath Anthony Lay, whose instructions she followed for the accomplishment of her number. In front of them, 4 nailers were laid out on a table, and at the urging of the telepath, Sarah had to grab one. Obviously unfamiliar with this tool, she had a bad idea of holding it the wrong way round, running the risk of hitting herself in the head with a nail. Luckily, the audience and guests immediately alerted Sarah. The latter, taken of panic, trembled to make the least gesture before a woman came to turn over the weapon with precaution and to avoid the worst to the presenter. More fear than harm for Sarah Harris. In these images of Shanghai relayed by the NY Post, we see a woman wanting to take the elevator. But when it opened in front of her, something abnormal and disturbing happened. A malfunction caused the elevator car to start rising before the door closed, and the woman had to act very quickly to avoid a fatal drama. Indeed, if she had not withdrawn in time, the ascent of the cabin would have precipitated her in a few seconds on the upper floor. In any case, she must have not hesitated at that moment to take the stairs. On a sunny day south of the city of Perth, Australia, Harrison and his thrill-seeking friends were sailing a small boat. Suddenly, a rare sight came into view, a whale carcass floating on the surface, half butchered by sharks, and surrounded by sharks. Then, Harrison, encouraged by his friends, set himself the perilous challenge of surfing on the back of the gigantic mammal. Unaware of the danger, he jumped into the water and swam to the poor animal before climbing on it. On this island of flesh, the young Australian is quite happy with himself, and without the threat of sharks around him, he would surely have stayed there longer. But he did not take long to get back on the boat, under the laughter and the cheers of his friends. It is only once on the boat that he realizes the imprudence of his action. Later he will say that his mother called him an idiot and that his father was unhappy with him. Harrison won't have the same dangerous carefree attitude from now on, especially since after the sharks were reported, authorities banned access to the city's coastal waters. As for the crippled whale, it has since washed up on Scarborough Beach. That's it, that's the end of the video. So which of these people is the luckiest? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.